Welcome to The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Susan Kennedy. Much of the work of the Montgomery County Council takes place behind the walls of 100 Maryland Avenue. But in this show, we take you outside those walls into the community where the work of your county lawmakers is making a difference. And we start this time with a town in the Up-County that is known for its farming and quiet character, not its nightlife. That soon may change, as in November, Damascus residents will have the opportunity to vote on whether or not they want beer and wine to be sold in their sleepy little town. The bottom line here, economic development or preservation of this quiet corner of Montgomery County. Folks in Damascus have voted 4 times in the last 35 years to uphold the prohibition. The last time the community voted was in 1996, and it was only a few hundred votes short of getting the ban lifted. This time it was the work of an Eagle Scout that revived the issue.
We actually gave them some history information, found out the exact history behind it and that it needed to be a referendum, gave that information back to the student. From what we understand, the student transmitted that information to the community. The community then contacted their state representatives and asked for it to be put on the ballot. You want to talk about community in action, this is it right here.
Jay Traverso wants to see the ban lifted for the simple reason of economic development.
Damascus has always had a problem because of the situation with not being able to have alcohol sales here. We can't bring restaurants. Without restaurants, you won't see other stores. When you go into the town area, you'll notice a lot of empty buildings. Other areas would be ideal for redevelopment at this point.
Traverso and others who want to see the ban lifted are getting another chance. A bill that would put the question to voters in November passed both the House and Senate during this year's General Assembly session.
A lot of them get tired of driving elsewhere to have a good meal out with perhaps a white tablecloth restaurant with a glass of wine, light wine, not fortified, and beer, sitting down at the table. About 30 people came to me, we met at their home, and I said yes, I'd put in the bill.
Randy Scritchfield led the repeal the last time it came before the voters in '96. He says there are lots of misconceptions associated with bringing beer and wine to Damascus.
My regret on this issue is that it gets demagogued and misportrayed. And this bill will not allow package stores. It will not allow liquor. It must be beer and wine consumed on the premises when eating food. And I think that's palatable and something that the community is ready for.
But many of the residents in Damascus say they want their community to stay just as it is.
Along with those things comes industry that will take over the community feel.
We like things just the way they are. Everything's nice and simple. If you want to go for wine or beer or anything, you don't have to go that far. So we're happy with the way things are.
In May of last year, Councilmember Nancy Florine received some news that would change her life. She was diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer, and with that diagnosis came a new approach to and outlook on life. It was a routine mammogram that set Nancy Florine's life on a new course. Stage 1 breast cancer, a lumpectomy, radiation, and regular checkups with her oncologist would be the protocol for the coming year.
And I still can't believe that I have breast cancer. I really don't think it's sunk in.
Today, 1 year later, she is cancer-free.
I'm good to go. I just had my 1-year checkup, soup to nuts, and there's no evidence of recurrence right at this point, so that's good.
When asked how her cancer diagnosis changed her, Councilmember Florine says today she pays more attention to what she eats and makes a point to exercise regularly.
We're learning the benefits of kale. My husband hates it. So I make him eat more leafy green vegetables. We're eating a lot more fish. We're trying to go as organic as we can.
Through her own regular visits to the oncologist during her treatment, Councilmember Florine learned of an option she decided would be a smart move in preventative care for her own family members: genetic testing.
I'm getting their advice as to whether to go forward based on my family's genetic characteristics. So we'll see what they say.
Just have a seat for me, and then as soon as she comes over, we'll get started.
After doing some research of her own and discovering a family history of cancer, she decided to go through with it.
So let's go on back.
Okay, all right.
Dr. Judy Macon was Ms. Florine's genetic counselor.
Only about 5 to 10% of women who are diagnosed with breast cancer do have a genetic component. So what we do is we look for clues in a family to see, is this a family that is appropriate to consider testing? The thing I'm concerned about, I guess, on your mom's side of the family, is you had an aunt with uterus cancer and breast cancer.
For Nancy Florine, the discovery of aunts and cousins who had a history of cancer made the decision to undergo genetic testing an easy one.
That's good, but you do have a lot of family members. I must say, this side of your family is a little more suspicious than this side. We look for things like, has the woman personally been affected with breast cancer and the age she was diagnosed? Is there a family history of breast cancer or ovarian cancer? So we look for clues in the family and see maybe it is appropriate to consider offering a woman or a man, because men and women both can have these mutations, the BRCA1, BRCA2 genetic test. Hi girls, how's it going?
A two-time cancer survivor herself, Dr. Macon says this type of testing does not predict breast cancer.
Good afternoon, Suburban Hospital Cancer Program. This is Judy.
But does allow women to make more informed choices about their health.
A lot of people come into this thinking, well, why should I want to know? You should want to know so that you can help reduce your risk of certain cancers the most you can. That's empowering. That's getting ahead of the game.
If you're educated to know that there is something you need to be specially attentive to, I think it is a benefit to you and your family. So yeah, I went ahead and did it, and luckily the results came back very positively. So what that means is they didn't find anything. That doesn't mean that I'm not carrying something, but of the standard tests, I'm clean, and that's a very is a great relief.
Over the past year, Councilmember Florine has made it her mission to make sure women remember to get their mammograms. She signs each of her emails with a reminder to do so, and she knows of several cases where women went in for testing at her suggestion and found out that they too had cancer. She says it's critical for women to stay on top of their health.
For women, that's an easy thing to skip, especially as you get older. You say, I've done all those tests, I've had those kids, I'm done with all that, and at least for the kind of breast cancer I experienced, I had no idea. It was only as a result of a routine checkup that this was found, and I think that's pretty typical.
The Cancer Control Center provides yearly breast and cervical cancer screenings free of charge for low-income, uninsured female residents of Montgomery County.
The resources are there. We've put quite a bit of money into community health here in Montgomery County. We're better than most in terms of our attention to this issue in the community. Somewhere, ladies, right there.
Today, Nancy Florine says life is good. Though she may not feel completely back to her old self, she is grateful for where she is and how she got here.
Well, I'm still on a regimen, regular checkups with the oncologist. And I think really till for the next 6 months or so. And then I think it's sort of an annual thing until I get to the 5-year point. I'm really a boring case, which is a great way to be.
Each year, the 47 senators and 141 delegates from various jurisdictions from around the state meet in Annapolis to act on more than 2,300 bills, including the state's annual budget. But this year's session had a different ending than most. Legislators failed to reach an agreement on the budget. The bottom line here, a rare special session. When the General Assembly adjourned April 9th, it had approved a spending plan, but not the accompanying revenue package sought by Governor Martin O'Malley. Lawmakers came back to work in May to hammer out the details of a tax package that raised taxes on 23% of Montgomery County residents.
Well, I regret this outcome. I was among those who urged our state legislature to adopt a sales tax as floated by the governor. I thought that that would generate more revenue. I thought it would treat Montgomery County much more fairly, and it would create the possibility of significant infusion in transit. So to me, to have a budget now that relies on 32% of the money coming out of Montgomery County puts us at a more difficult position.
I'm really concerned about the way the conversation happened in terms of the revenues package. I believe in progressive taxation. I think that those of us who have more can and should pay more, but the cost of living issues in Montgomery County have not been addressed. I'm very concerned about, for example, there's a huge disparity in the cost of child care. Montgomery County residents pay a lot more in child care than other residents throughout the state.
Despite the tax increases, Montgomery County legislators worked diligently throughout the session to soften the blow of the shift of teacher pension costs back to the county, as well as changes in the maintenance of effort law.
We are going to be doing some version of a switch of the teachers' pensions. Breaks my heart because it's one of the few areas where Montgomery County actually gets a pretty fair deal.
We do want to protect maintenance of effort around the state so that there's a continued partnership between the states and the counties to fund Maryland schools. So we don't want to lose Maryland's good school system. So the maintenance of effort is important for that.
It will have to be readjusted because right now in the present economic climate, we cannot continue where we were a few years ago.
I know that there are going to be impacts in the long term, but we also know, that we can predict it now, so we know what impact it's going to have and can be fit into our budgeting process.
Councilmember Craig Rice, a former delegate himself, made his presence known throughout the legislative session. He says he wants lawmakers to remember Montgomery County when they are taking votes with far-reaching implications.
We've had these visions of shaping our future for the county. I want to make sure that the decisions that they're making are in line with those. And so, with the assist of our council President Roger Berliner, who asked me to be here to help in making sure that that message was heard, we want to make sure that we continue to do that so that folks really take all of this into consideration when making these votes that are going to really affect, how we're able to, manage from here on out.
This session, the legislature also voted to double the flush tax to keep up with water and wastewater infrastructure. The tax is used to fund a Chesapeake Bay restoration fund. Though the gas tax proposal was put on the back burner, lawmakers say the idea is not completely dead.
The bottom line is we do need to find revenue to meet our transportation needs, and particularly in Montgomery County, my constituents recognize that we've got the worst traffic gridlock in the country, and that costs time and money, quality of life, and it affects our economic development as well. So we need to do something at some point.
Also passed in both the House and Senate, a measure that would allow folks in Damascus to decide whether or not they want beer and wine to be sold in their community. Damascus is one of the last dry communities in the state. The last time the idea was on the ballot was in 1996.
The team, Karen Montgomery, Eric Lukey, and Ann Kaiser and I had been receiving a lot of correspondence from constituents that said they want to have an opportunity to have a choice. And what we did was we gave them a vehicle in order to have a choice in this, and whatever they decide is up to them.
But for many in Annapolis, the highlight of the session came early when the legislature passed the Marriage Equality Act.
Being able to pass the marriage equality bill to protect religious freedom and also human dignity equally in the context of civil marriage was a big accomplishment for us.
Marriage responsibilities and rights that come from that protection of that state-granted marriage license, 425 rights that come with that at the courthouse door, that is something that should apply to every family, a benefit for every family. We'll allow churches to still decide whether or not they want to bless these marriages and whether or not they want to perform the ceremony. Some do, some don't. That's up to the churches. But we're deciding here in Maryland that when you walk through the courthouse door with a state-granted marriage license that gives state-granted protections, that every family deserves to be protected equally under the law.
Well, that wraps up this edition of The Bottom Line. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kennedy. Thanks for tuning in.